What was the most awkward thing you witnessed at school or in a classroom? Share your stories about what was the most embarrassing thing you did in high school. Enjoy the show. Story 1. Student teacher being assessed by her visiting teacher in our class. Kid throws his hand up in the air, not realizing she was behind him. He punches her square in the face, mouth and nose bleeding. Her glasses had been shoved into her eyes, so her eyes were watering. We grab her tissues, and her teacher did nothing. She later explained that part of the assessment was seeing what she would do if a situation arose and she was alone. We didn't know that, so he got yelled at a lot by some fizzy little 13-year-olds. We liked her, so we were angry, but also feeling a little helpless. But the silence after she got hit, you could feel it. Story 2. I was in year 11 science. I sat at the back of the class away from all my friends due to the teacher's seating plan. Anyway, our teacher was talking about the negatives of smoking and how his dad sadly passed away at the age of only 68. All of a sudden, the class went quiet and one of my friends said to someone, "If only he lived another year," whilst smacking his knee. As a previous comment said, you could have heard a pin drop. It was brilliant. Story 3. It was me, actually. Not that bad in retrospect, but as I walked to the front of the classroom to deliver a speech, I was wearing my dad's jeans without a belt, and right before I was behind the podium, my pants fell down. I had papers in my hand, so I couldn't really grab them until I was behind said podium. So I kinda just wobbled a couple steps with my pants down until I was out of view. Some students didn't even notice, but boy, the ones who did were howling with laughter. Story 4. History teacher got on a tangent about rape, unprovoked from our point of view. He may have had something come up or happen in the news that was bothering him. Anyways, he gains the full attention of the room by loudly listing off a bunch of rape sexual assault statistics. Stated that X number of every 10 women are raped. Then points to every girl in the room one by one and says only raped and not raped. Going through my head are a lot of thoughts. First off, how did we get here? This is extremely uncomfortable. How did he decide which of the girls were raped and not raped? It was extremely weird, and I feel like none of us talked about it afterwards. I think he got his point across, and it was damn sure effective at creating awareness. But wow, was that awkward. Story 5. Definitely the two guys in my high school pet biology class. Something like that. Watching porn on one of their phones. I was sitting next to them in the back of the class. They played it during the whole class. Documentary was being played. I had no idea what to say about it, so I just kept my mouth shut because of how embarrassing it would be for me to just snitch and say, "Teacher, they guess are watching porn in class out of the blue on a Friday." I'm too shy now. I was worse in high school. Ain't no way I'd say something like that. And you, fear of being bullied by them afterwards and whatnot. Story 6. 2 classmates were fighting outside. One of them came crying inside while holding his stomach. As the other classmate came in, the teacher called him to go outside with him and he pulled the door. While the door was closing, my desk partner and me saw from our angle how the teacher pressed him on the wall with one hand and hitting a strong right hook with the other fist. The door closed. Some seconds later, they both walked in while the classmate was holding his stomach crying. We were left in shock. It was dead quiet. The lesson started. Story 7. So we had this kid in my grade who loved to stir shit. Everyone knows a kid like this. Always pissing people off for no reason. One day, he began harassing a girl in my class. She happened to be the girlfriend of the largest football player in school. Her boyfriend found out at lunchtime, challenged this idiot to a fight after school. This football player was Samoan and 7 feet tall at 17 years old. This idiot bully was like 5 feet and weighed nothing. He kept talking shit and accepted the fight. All day, every single kid in school heard about it, and that afternoon, like 200 kids rocked up to the park to watch this fight. The little dipshit took off his shirt and was parading around swearing and slapping his chest like a gorilla. The Samoan giant just stood there quietly watching him. As the idiot took off his shirt, we all saw this deuce kid had 2 massive nipple piercings. As the 2 kids squared up and everyone formed a circle around them, the football leaned in and without skipping a beat grabbed both nipple piercings and ripped them out with all his might. Blood went everywhere and the kid dropped to the floor. The sound of 200 kids squealing in shock and running away in horror was so unforgettably funny, but also so awkward. We never saw this bully again after that fight. Story 8. When I was in 7th grade, there was this girl. She was very mental and was recently moved to a mental hospital anyway. One day, she went in our classroom and she was on her phone, and the teacher said, "Put it away," and then she said, "Well, then I'll shoot you." The class went silent. Soon she put it away shortly after they were arguing. I don't remember why, but yeah. After a bit, she picked up her metal water bottle and began beating our teacher, till she bled. She then screamed, "Ashley, you're next, you fucking whore." Side note, I'm Ashley, and she never liked me for, quote, dating her man. I ran up and told her I don't give a shit. Soon she strikes me, and after a few hits, I managed to grab a chair. I threw the chair at her, and soon she grabbed my hair and bashed it on the window, not strong enough to break it, but strong enough to draw blood. I soon screamed, "You insane fucking whore!" and I kicked her on the ground and began punching her as hard as I could soon. The argument ended, but she was still scratching and hitting me in the outcome. She went to juvie. The teacher had to breathe with a machine, but she was pregnant too, but managed to have healthy triplets. Story 9. First year of HS, I fell on the stairs coming up to the building. The whole HS saw me down with my backpack on my neck laughing, and kid you not, I couldn't stand back up. I was probably like a turtle belly up. Don't ask me about the physics of that IDK. An older girl took pity and helped me up. That day I learned that laughing at yourself can be extremely healthy and helpful. If I had cried or something happened before, it would have been horrible. I laughed it off with my friends, now it's an awkward but fun memory. Story 10. Math class, Immunity College. The girl next to me dropped her pencil and tried reaching for it quietly. She somehow loses her balance over the bar that ties the desk to the chair, and by the time everyone heard the commotion, she was doing a full handstand. That's not even the worst part. During her acrobatic move, her pants got pulled down, and half of her ass crack was facing a class of 30. She got on her feet and sat back down, and people showed more concern than laughter. I couldn't contain myself, so had to leave. Story 11. In maybe 10th grade, we had a sculpting class where we used clay to make a rough mold of what we'd eventually sculpt. A kid in my class thought it would be funny to make something shaped like a gun, but he wasn't very good at manipulating clay, so the gun was quite abstract, and more like a lumpy arm bent 75 degrees at the elbow. This was also pre-Columbine. Teacher wasn't amused. He looked the kid straight in the eyes, said, "Open your mouth," and shoved the gun in. Not all the way, but far enough to prove his point. The kid was picking clay out of his teeth for the rest of class. We sat in whispering silence, and the teacher tried to instruct like nothing happened, but the look on his face and his body language said, "I fucked up." Story 12. In high school, the Spanish teacher would record everyone for their final speaking exam. Eventually, it turned out he was a pedo and had terabytes of child porn, a couple high-tech sex dolls, and was using the recordings of students to create his own porn. All the women thought it was them. Then it turned out to be the men, actually. Anyway, his sister was my math teacher, and obviously this was huge news, and she addressed it, while crying in front of class the next day. I just put my head down. It was a lot to take it. I never took Spanish, thankfully. Story 13. I've got a lot, but I'll only tell one LOL in our area. It's common for seminarians to teach in high school for like once a week, but we had the opportunity to be taught by missionaries from Malta. These old ladies were so strict that we can't have anything on our desk during the lecture, not even a pen or a piece of paper to take notes. One time we're on a topic about hope and promises, and that a rainbow symbolizes it. One of the old ladies tried to name the colors in the rainbow, and that my friend was when things get awkward, 'cause if my memory is right, she wrote indigo instead of Roig Biv. Since she was writing on the blackboard, she can't see us, the whole class, looking at each other and talking using eyes about who's going to tell who. We don't have the guts to correct her because she's so strict, and she embarrassed anyone in class. We kept our mouth shut, and since she wasn't able to figure it out, she said she'll tell us next week what the colors are. Story 14. Happened when I was in high school. The drama class was doing a play on a stage in the cafeteria, and they had to put out a bunch of those cheap plastic lawn chairs because there weren't enough chairs to seat everybody. One kid got up to use the bathroom. When he came back, he didn't want to miss anything in the play, so he kinda aggressively jumped into one of the plastic chairs, which it then completely shattered under his weight. He fell back, and several large, jagged pieces of plastic lodged themselves into his body. One wound up in his neck, and he started bleeding profusely. He survived, but I remember being in complete shock at how much blood was pooping on the floor. Story 15. There was a teacher in my sophomore regional history class that would just give out tons of busy work after a short lecture on the nights reading homework. He was also the junior girls' volleyball coach. He would make himself available if we had questions while grading the previous class's work. If any of the girls that he coached had a question, he would pretty much hug them from behind and rest his head on their shoulders and explain the assignment to the girls. I remember this one girl, Marissa. She was the captain of the junior girls' volleyball team, and he would pretty much mount her from behind. It was beyond fucked up, and I remember that I was a new sophomore in that school, and I knew next to no one, and everyone wasn't even looking, like it was completely normal behavior for a teacher to do. I almost walked into my vice principal's office right then and there and reported it, but again, new quiet kid. I was terrified of no one believing me or that I was crazy. I never reported it, and I remember it happened so fucking often. I regret not saying something to this day. Lots of inappropriate shit went on with teachers and especially coaches, in my opinion. Our swim team had an after-competition team dinner, and our coach admitted who she would fuck in order of attraction on the team, only if she absolutely had to. I remember us pressing her pretty hard for an answer because she refused at first. That was a weird year as well. Junior year? Story 16, 10th grade science class. We were viewing slides under the microscope, and a classmate burst out in tears and begged the teacher not to force her to view the slide of an onion peel BC. She apparently had an onion phobia. The teacher had no intention to force her whatsoever. He didn't give a shit. That same year, the same teacher had to break it to another student that the worms that appears after rain sometimes came from the ground, not the sky. She seemed to legitimately believe worms fell with the rain, which was told her by her parents. Story 17. I caught my middle school health, F, and science, M teachers hooking up in an empty classroom one time. I was there for an after-school activity, and I went to go get my coat that I had left in a classroom, and when I opened the door, they were both behind the teacher's desk, frantically getting their shirts back on. The science teacher immediately started saying that they were trying on costumes for Spirit Week, but I was in middle school. I wasn't dumb. I just closed the door and told all my friends about it. The craziest part was that they were both married to different people. When I was in high school, they both got divorces and started to see each other. They are both married to each other now, with children of their own. Story 18. Middle school. We had this PE teacher who was super creepy. Would always walk into the girls' locker room to tell them it was class time, knowing they were changing. His daughter was our grade as well, and at our school, towards the end of 7th grade, he got caught having sex with girl and his daughters, my grade. Basically, her parents somehow found out, and she had pictures and whatnot with him in the act. Long story short, he went to prison, and it turned out there was like 10 other girls. It was a huge deal. Pretty sure he got released a while back. In high school, we had the same thing. Music teacher was molesting teenage boys when the news broke. A ton of people came out about it from years and years before we were in high school. He ended up taking his own life while out on bail. Other than that, just standard high school bullshit. Few stabbings and a shooting, just one-person gangs. Lot of fights, few hate crimes. Someone painted a giant swastika on the gym facing a main road, which made national news. One kid unalived himself in the school bathroom. Oh, and this kid's mom had a foursome with 3 seniors. Story 19. I was teaching at a private school a few decades ago, 1980s. Had a caller say they planted a bomb on the premises. Police were called. All students were lined up, sitting in lines with classmates. It was blistering hot outside, and we were required to keep all the kids in those lines in the direct sun. We were out there for a couple hours. The police and bomb dogs do their thing. No active explosives were found, but a box of toy grenades were located in an upstairs room not used for teaching. Eventually, all the kids were picked up, but it was a crazy day, and we never found out who put the toy grenades up there, or how the person even got access to that part of the school. Story 20. Had a sub-teacher in a class of disorderly students. I happened to be the TA. The kids were being really obnoxious that morning. Then they started throwing books at me. I asked to go to the library or office because I was scared. These kids were all a couple grades ahead of me and I was tiny compared to them. That sub did nothing, didn't stop them or stand up for me. They kept throwing books and rolled up papers at me. I asked if I could use the restroom and she told me no. Looking back, I think she enjoyed watching me get bullied. By the end of class, I was crying with my head down on a desk. After the bell rang, I just sat there and tried to compose myself. She never budged. She never looked at me as I stood up and left. I've not thought about that in decades. What's funny is that I ultimately became a teacher, and I've always told myself that I will defend and stand up for the unpopular and bullied kids, because they are the ones who need encouragement and support. Story 21. When I was 14, my class was wild. Our history teacher was horrible, but I guess we deserved it. Somehow, it's always the history teacher. During one of our classes, a girl randomly decided to meow. She did it a couple of times. After that, a guy followed with moos, another one with barks, and so on. The teacher was trying to regain control of her class, but it was useless. Once this group started, there was no stopping them. This lasted for about 10 minutes, and they got tired of it, so they started yelling animal names. Try picturing a 14-yo boy shouting kangaroo in the middle of class, followed by his buddy yelling turtle. Yeah, that's crazy enough, but it doesn't stop there. At this point, the teacher has stopped the class and is fuming, understandably. She's sitting at her desk with the I'm waiting look on her face and her arms crossed on her chest. One of the guys decides it'd be fun to throw a pen at a girl. The girl retaliates, and it turns into a full war. People are throwing things all around the classroom. One guy throws a highlighter so hard it pokes a hole in the wall. The teacher exits the classroom and comes back a few minutes later with the headmaster, who rips us all a new one. That was the end for that day. We didn't see the history teacher for the next 2 or so weeks. What was I doing at the time? I had my head in my arms without a care in the world. That's how common chaos was in my class that year. I could open an entire Storytime YouTube channel from all the stories I have from that class alone. Yes, most of the members of this group were suspended multiple times. Story 22. It was me. I caused it. I've had horrible anxiety my entire life, partially due to severe ADHD, and my 3rd grade teacher was the biggest cunt on the planet. No fucking clue how she was ever allowed a license to teach. She particularly hated me because of all the disruptions I'd cause, and was incredibly harsh on me. So, little me, too afraid to ask to go to the bathroom, pissed my pants enough to leave a sizable puddle on those little plastic chair seats, the ones that cup your butt to be more comfortable. So, like tactless children want to do, someone yelled out, "Ebu, someone peed in this chair!" We were gathered around somewhere else in the room, and since the teacher knew where everyone sat, she immediately homed in on me, yelling, "Name, go to the nurse's office and get a change of clothes now." Great start to my ever-deadening self-esteem. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, like it, be sure to write comments and share your stories.